Dear ladies and gentlemen, we start our next press briefing. I'm glad to welcome Mr. Michael Bociurkiw, spokesperson of the OSCE Special Monitoring Mission. He will speak of the security in Ukraine and provide new updates on the results of the mission. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I'm glad to be back with you. I'm sorry for me about to speak English because we have special terms to be used. Next time I will try my Ukrainian.
Back with you. It has been a little bit of some time since we have been here to brief you on the activities of the Special Monitoring Mission to Ukraine, and also our reporting on the general security situation. As spokesperson, I am going to try and be here quite a bit more often with the permission of the Ukrainian Crisis Media Center, and also in this way that there won't be any information gap as to our work. And as many of you know, there's a lot of information, rumors out there that we would also like to clear up. If I may, let me just give you, again, because it's been a bit of time, a brief update on our mission strength. At the moment, the Special Monitoring Mission to Ukraine stands at about 259 monitors, international monitors, and in 10 cities across Ukraine. We have people from more than 40 countries working as monitors, including from America, from Canada, the Russian Federation, and many European countries, of course. Also, we continue to receive new monitors almost on a monthly basis. As many of you know, we're aiming for a final mission strength of 500 monitors, so we're a little over halfway there. Currently, we're getting ready to receive 24 more monitors. They're currently in training in Vienna, and then they'll come here for additional training. And I wanted also to point out to you that within our mission, we have about 120 Ukrainian nationals working for us in human resources and finance, IT, as interpreters. And I thought this is important to point out as well, because if there's one thing that we found out recently in our recruiting and so on, is the incredible bank of talent here in Ukraine. Many young people who have gone overseas to gain education, job skills, and come back. So we're benefiting from that growing group of professional Ukrainians. Now, I know many of you are interested in the current situation, and I wanted to read a brief press statement on behalf of the Special Monitoring Mission, and we'll endeavor to get this online later and distribute it. So, the level of violence in eastern Ukraine and the risk of further escalation remain high and are rising. More than 2 months after the signing of the Minsk Protocol memorandum, the firing has not ceased. There have been more than one spot report by our monitors in eastern Ukraine that have been particularly worrying. And I know many of you have seen them. They reported on convoys of unmarked trucks, heavy weapons that were observed in areas controlled by rebel groups in Donetsk. And those observations were just in the past few days. Once again, we reiterate the need for immediate de-escalation and maximum restraint. The Special Monitoring Mission to Ukraine, as reiterated many times by our Chief Monitor, Ambassador Apakan, wants to be helpful to Ukraine. We will continue with our impartial monitoring and our independent and objective reporting. The Special Monitoring Mission urges all concerned to urgently commit to full implementation of the Minsk documents designed to bring peace and stability to Ukraine. Excuse me, and that's the end of the statement. Just a few more points if I can, and then I'll take some questions. Now, as I said, we continue to enhance the Special Monitoring Mission security and operational capacities, and to expand the mission in order to support the implementation of the Minsk documents. The Special Monitoring Mission to Ukraine is and remains an unarmed civilian mission, and again, we wanted to remind you that we are here at the invitation of the government of Ukraine. You should know that the ability of the Special Monitoring Mission to monitor the implementation of the Minsk documents, including ceasefire monitoring, poses considerable security and operational challenges on the mission. And as I said before, we do assume a certain amount of risk. Many of you will remember some months ago when 8 of our colleagues were kidnapped and held for an entire month by armed groups. Also, there was an incident a few weeks ago where we had a 2 armored vehicle convoy in eastern Ukraine, and it came very close to shelling, and one of the vehicles was damaged so badly we had to abandon it and retreat. In regards to the Minsk documents, we can say that the Special Monitoring Mission to Ukraine has still not observed or been informed of a single case of withdrawal of heavy weapons from the security zone. A sustainable and durable ceasefire can only be reached by the sides themselves. It remains a matter of urgency that more real progress be made towards implementation of the Minsk documents. Now, it's often overlooked in this big story, but also we felt it important to just say a couple of things on the humanitarian situation in the eastern part of Ukraine. So we do continue to monitor and report on the movement and situation of internally displaced peoples in Ukraine and Pereselenci. We also continue to monitor and report on the situation of those displaced from Crimea. We have voiced concerns on many occasions about the harsh conditions that IDPs could face as winter takes hold, and we're also very mindful of the situation of civilians in the conflict zone, many of which, for example, in cities like Luhansk, have gone many weeks without power, water, and gas. And I can tell you from our monitoring and also our personal visits to some of the IDP centers that many of them are actually housed in facilities that are not winterized. Many of them are vulnerable, meaning women and children. And we are very concerned that there be, immediate and meaningful steps taken to help protect them during the winter time. Having said that, we should remind you that the passing on the law of ensuring the rights and freedoms of IDPs by the Ukrainian government, Ukrainian Parliament on the 20th of October was seen as very much a positive step. Also, our chief monitor reminded me to emphasize the foundation of all Special Monitoring Mission activities remains the mandate as outlined in Permanent Council Decision 1117, which was agreed by all 57 participating states, including Ukraine. In eastern Ukraine, where we have about 100 monitors with many, many more to come, the mission will continue to monitor not only the security zone, but also the entire regions of Luhansk and Donetsk, up to the state border between Ukraine and the Russian Federation. And again, important to emphasize that at all times we operate on the basis of OSCE principles and commitments. And we also wanted to reiterate the Chief Monitor's support and respect for stability, peace, and security of Ukraine. Finally, Chief Monitor also wanted to commend the government and people of Ukraine for the successful holding of the recent parliamentary elections. And he would like to emphasize re-emphasize his full support for President Poroshenko's peace plan. On that, I'd open the floor to questions.
Yeah, sure. I'm sure we have some questions. Thanks, Michael, a lot.
Pierre Day from AFP. 2 questions, if I may. As you said, the shelling and casualties have been reported every day over the past few days. How would you characterize the status of the ceasefire agreement on the ground? And secondly, I know it's not your core activity, but regarding the Boeing of Malaysia Airlines, are you on the spot? What can you tell us about what's being done to remove the wreck? Thank you.
I'll take the second question first and then answer your other one. As you know, many of us have been very closely engaged with MH17. We were on the ground there exactly 24 hours after the plane came tragically down in eastern Ukraine. For many, many days immediately following the crash of the Boeing 777, we facilitated access for experts to go to the crash site to begin that immediate humanitarian mission, as well as recovery of evidence of personal belongings and, of course, of human remains. That work has continued sporadically, and the reason for that is due to the very fluid security situation. As many of you may recall, when we first arrived at the M817 site, there was no perimeter security, so the entire site was very vulnerable. Also, a reminder that that crash site is right in the middle of a conflict zone, and I know from reports from people like yourself, fellow journalists, journalist friends, and also our monitors, that on many days when you go there, there's shelling very nearby. So that's why it's taking as long as it has. The Dutch, which of course are leading the investigation recovery effort, are very much trying to ramp up their activities right now. The collection of personal belongings has proceeded at quite a rapid pace. The collection of human remains is in its concluding stages, and I believe the Dutch have acknowledged that it's possible that all of the human remains will never be found. And then the last kind of big step is the recovery of the wreckage. And I know that they were looking at around this time to begin that process. It's a very complex process, as you might expect, because there are very large pieces of the airplane still there. And also, there is a very intensely damaged, what we call a burn zone, where the wings, the fuel tanks, the undercarriage, and the midsection of the aircraft went down. And that area is particularly difficult in terms of recovery of remains and evidence. And so our role, just to finish answering your second question, is to facilitate access. So on any given day, we negotiate with people who are in control of that area, and we not only negotiate the access, but we also provide the Dutch and any other interesting parties with the security situation update, because of course it's very important that no one gets injured from going there. And lastly on that point, again, as we've said so many times, our hearts and prayers do go out to the families of the victims of MH17. We think about them, we grieve for them every day, and yesterday, in fact, there was a memorial service held in the Netherlands. On the ceasefire, you know, we want to and we remain hopeful. We don't want to pass judgment right now on where things stand, but I can tell you that Ambassador Apokan is doing everything possible, and also our Swiss Chair in Office, Secretary General and others, to keep the dialogue open. As I've said many times, the worst thing that could happen right now in the current situation if there's no dialogue whatsoever. So there are meetings on a very wide levels to keep the dialogue going in the hopes of achieving peace and stability.
Did Michael respond to the question, the first one, about the ceasefire?
I hope so.
No, if I may, just a follow-up on the MH17.
Sure.
Do you have any indication as to when the recovery of the wreckage could start?
Well, there are many factors, among them, of course, security. It's a very, very fluid situation, and also weather factors. The experts have told us that the moment you have frost on the ground, it could be very difficult to continue that complex process of collection of human remains. But on the collection of the big pieces of wreckage, I think if everything is positive in the coming days, you will see some activity there, the removal of the wreckage. The idea there, of course, is not only to return that agricultural land to, you know, the use that it's originally intended for, and to bring back more normal life to the residents of that area, but also these are pieces of evidence. I've called that crash site one of the biggest open crime scenes in the world. So part of that investigation does involve collection of the wreckage and careful examination of it in a sterile and peaceful environment.
Добрий день, Людмила Бадалян, ТСН 1+1.
Людмила Подолян, 1+1. The National Security and Defense Council directly accused OSCE members for the disclosure of information about the location of Ukrainian military forces, and there have been numerous informations of late about OSCE's collaboration with Russian military, and at the same time mission pretending not to notice Russian military in Donbass. What is your reaction to that?
We do not give away positions of the Ukrainian military. I think part of this came out from the fact that people were reporting on the work of the JCCC, which is composed of general staff from the Russian and the Ukrainian side. We want to emphasize that we are not part of the JCCC. They are very independent from us. We do monitor what they are doing, but for sure we're not part of that mission. So I wanted to make that clear that our reporting is very independent, neutral. We aim to be as accurate as possible. You will know if you read our daily reports that we're not in a position to identify a number of things on most days, and that includes the source of shelling and also the identification of heavily armed men. I can go back many months, way back to the days of Slavyansk, when there were problems there and unidentified men showing up, and we were at that time asked many times, "Well, where are they from?" And I said, these people, they don't carry business cards or identification around. But what we did say, we were very frank, is that we did record and report on a gradual buildup of heavy weaponry with these unidentified individuals. Our mission is not only to facilitate dialogue, but to establish the facts and to report on them to all 57 member states, including Ukraine, the Russian Federation, Canada, USA, and all the other states. And it is up to, and I also wanted to emphasize that we do not influence the situation. My nie wpływajmy na sytuację, but we do establish the facts, and it's up to other levels to determine further action from that. I also wanted to clear up something else on this opportunity of your question about a report that is going around. We do have some colleagues in Mariupol. As you know, some of our UAVs are based there. We now have 4 UAVs based near Mariupol. And there was a report that 80% of them are Russian. That's not true whatsoever. I actually counted today, there's only 1 in that group of monitors. So there you go with that one. Thank you.
Michael, just to compliment, because there is still a lot of buzz now in these days, and one of the points is that the group Information Resistance has rejected the cooperation with OSCE because of the provided information on that shelling at school that caused deaths of two teenagers. So how can you comment on that?
Yeah, well...
why the report of OSCE on that case is so different to the report of the National Security and Defense Council?
I know that there was a statement that something along the lines, they rejected the invitation for us to talk, but we did not seek out an audience with them, so I wanted to clear that up. And then, on the shelling of the school, this is an unacceptable, tragic event. As I said a bit earlier, as I alluded to earlier, is that in our reporting, we do report exactly what we see. And it's not always possible to establish the source of shelling. I think in this particular incident regarding the school, we were doing a kind of eyewitness analysis report. We were not doing an investigation. You will notice if you read our daily reports that at no time do we assign blame to any side. So again, as I said earlier, it's very important to read these reports carefully, our daily reports, weekly reports, spot reports, and you will see that we word our eyewitness accounts are reporting very carefully, and we do not assign blame in them. So.
But in the report you mentioned that the shelling was made from Pisky, which is locality controlled by Ukrainian army.
I think what that report said was it came from a certain direction, but at no time are we assigning blame to that. On that opportunity, I'm also going to say that we are, and especially Ambassador Apakan, very concerned about how children, vulnerable children, are getting caught up in the current situation, not only in terms of what I described earlier, the humanitarian situation, but the incidents around schools. Also, there have been reports, which we are still looking to, about young children getting caught up or involved in the conflict somehow. So, and then also an issue very, very dear to us are the young children, the youth who were in towns like Petropavlovka when MH17 came down. I've talked to many of those children personally, and I can tell you that they've gone through an extremely horrific time. And we can only imagine what they're going through, not only after MH17, but now also that there's shelling raining down on them. So this is something we all have to be very mindful of what these young people are going through.
Thank you so much. We have a few more questions.
А скажіть, будь ласка, от з приводу цієї
Coming back to the school question, would you tell us who were those people who wrote this report, who spoke of the direction of shelling from where the shells were coming? And the more general question, do you have any facts and factual information about unlawful, illegal actions of, say, shelling of civilian population perpetrated by the Ukrainian side? Do you have any dead fact on that?
Again, reiterate what I said is that that particular report mentioned that it came from a certain direction. We're not assigning blame in any way. I think that's up to others to look into it. And in terms of our monitoring teams, we have, as I said, more than 40 nationalities represented from member states of the OSCE. These teams do not remain the same all the time. They do get reconfigured. So you have a very wide number, not only a wide number of nationalities, but a very wide number of expertise. And this is important to highlight because we do have many people who are, for example, former military, former law enforcement. We have human rights experts. And also a priority of Ambassador Apakan right now is to put out the plea, if I can put it that way, to members, participating states, is when they do send monitors to us, is that they have certain specialties, because I don't have to tell you that this the situation is becoming very, very complicated, and there is a recognition that we do need specialized skills to be able to more to not only accurately and objectively report, but also to look into things like situation of IDPs, human rights violations, the changing media landscape. The second question I didn't really understand.
Нагадайте друге запитання. Друге запитання про що було?
No, what we have reported on, and this has been for a long, long time now, is that shelling that has hit residential areas, Donetsk, Luhansk. We've even, I can tell you that the situation in Luhansk is so bad that we sent our monitoring team there, and they took video of actually what they saw, the terrible damage to the city, and that has now been turned into B-roll and shared with others. But again, we don't identify the source. We're an unarmed civilian mission. We do have limited capabilities in terms of identifying where shelling came from. But also, you have to remember that many times we go someplace and we're there and shelling happens while we're there trying to analyze the situation, and then we have to leave. So I know there has been some concern voiced that we don't spend enough time at certain locations, but there are very good reasons why we can only spend a limited amount of time sometimes at a certain location.
We have one more question from here.
Nick Shitko with the Wall Street Journal.
Hey.
I have a question. So today's allegations about the disclosure of sensitive information. So just want to make it clear, we are talking about yesterday's report and two monitors from OSCE that disclosed the information about heavier weapons and tanks around Karlivka, right? Is it
Around where?
Karlivka? Yeah, so is it the problem we are talking about? Is it the reason why Security Council blamed you for disclosing that? And can you maybe clarify a little bit, how do you collaborate with JCCC? How does it work? Because that's in my personal understanding, I thought that actually that's what we're supposed to do within that collaboration. Thank you.
Well, the second question first is the JCCC. A few days ago, I was addressing that very issue, and the way I described it was basically a formation. The details are still not entirely clear to us. We do know that there has been quite a bit of confusion around this subject because I believe there has been some branding issues. They've tried to brand themselves as OSCE and so on. But again, we are very, very independent from them. You will see in our daily reports that we have monitored their activities, and in some cases in the smaller villages where they're operational, they have said things like they don't have enough equipment or vehicles, things like that. But it's nothing more than observing their activities, because they are in the area, the security zone, operating in around the security zone. And I've actually encouraged journalists to go and meet with them and write more about them, because there is so much confusion about them. And then again, in terms of the other issue you mentioned, I think the report speaks for itself. I don't really want to read more into it than what is said right there, but I go back to our mandate, to our mission, is we try to establish the facts. We report on exactly what we see, and we're not there to assign blame or draw conclusions.
So just a quick follow-up. I think Lysenko was pretty... He was very firm on that you would understand what happened and what the problem was. So I am just trying to ask, do you get some feedback from them and what it was all about? So was it about this report, or was it about Mariupol, or about both? So what was the...
Yeah, I think on that particular one, I'll go back to my colleagues and ask, and then get back to you, because we do need to... That's okay.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Can we take one more question from
Sure,
here?
let's do one more.
Тобто, Ганна Чалова, СТБ, тобто ви...
STB channel, that is, you refute the information about OSCE Special Monitoring Mission representatives disclosing information on Ukrainian military positions, and that there are 80% Russian special services representatives among monitors. I can only confirm that there is just one Russian representative in the Mariupol group of monitors, and which definitely makes not 80%, as it has been stated.
He is, and also what our role is. And because we only observe, we don't even take part in their press conferences, that it can't happen that we reveal the position of one group of armed forces or the other. So I wanted to make that clear.
Let's take the last one question from here.
Вікторія Потапова, телеканалу...
Ukraine TV channel. Today, the permanent representative of Russia to OSCE condemned the OSCE in failing to provide enough information about movements of Ukrainian troops. This is as a kind of follow-up, if you want, of this alleged disclosure by OSCE of this information on Ukrainian troops location. What about OSCE as a side in this conflict? Because many Ukrainian military servicemen say that OSCE guys come just hours after the conflict to a special zone.
It's a very complex situation. There are security considerations involved in moving around our monitors. The last time I was here, I underlined the fact that the reason we cannot increase our presence in eastern Ukraine, and I'm getting to answer your question, is because at the moment we have a lack of armored vehicles. We want to more than double the number of monitors we have in eastern Ukraine so that we can report in a wider area and we can do it more quickly. It's not always possible to reach locations quickly, again, due to the security situation. And often it happens that our monitors do arrive somewhere, shelling returns, and they have to leave very quickly or earlier than planned. And then the next day it may not be possible because the situation has escalated. Again, I reiterate that in all of our reporting that we do, we adhere to OSCE principles and to what our mandate allows. I'll also tell you that, in order to enhance our monitoring to be more precise, to give us a better eye in the sky, we did at very big cost obtain 4 UAVs, also known as drones. And as you may remember, recently they were the target of shooting. Fortunately, the drones were not harmed. They were able to return safely. And also, there's been electronic jamming as well. And the second situation is something we're working with the manufacturer to rectify very quickly. So there's a whole set of factors involved, and I'm not trying to avoid specifics, but a whole set of factors involved that make the job very complex. But I'll end by saying this: is that we take our job very seriously, and the number one thing for us is objective and very exact reporting. And Ambassador Abakan has mentioned many times that we remain hopeful. We want to be here as long as we can. We want to be helpful to the people of Ukraine because we are here at the invitation of the Ukrainian government. The worst thing, as I said earlier, would be if there is no dialogue that we were facilitating, and if our monitors were not there on the situation to report to the international community. We do still, and we will continue to regard ourselves as the ears and eyes of the international community. Thank you very
Thank you so
much.
much, Michael. Thanks for coming
And
up
I
to
will be
us.
back again soon.
Yeah, and taking these questions and spreading the light on a lot of information that is in public domain these days. Thanks so much. Наш робочий день завершено. Дуже всім дякую.